Leute sind auch schon eingewählt, ne? Mhm. So. Dann würde ich. So. So, dear participant of our academy, I wish you all a good morning. I hope you are refreshed and you have already many insights of yesterday's lectures, discussions. And now we make a fresh start in the morning, and we start a real heavyweight, Markus Reif, but only mentally spoken a heavyweight, you see that. He is the financial director of the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising. In his office, he's overseeing a yearly budget of around 800 million euros. Heavyweight, huh? As a learned economist, he is surely the best man in charge. But Markus Reif is also a reflecting mind. So he shared some of his considerations in the monthly Stimmen der Zeit, and he argues for some reforms in the implementation of the German church tax system. You see, we have more than one reason to invite him to our academy. Mr. Reif, we are very glad that you accepted your invitation, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bodold, for the kind words. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first topic of the next day of this conference. Professor Bodold introduced me a little bit. My name is Markus Reif. He said Finanzdirektor, or according to the Code of Canon Law, the finance officer of the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising. Before I came to the Archdiocese, I studied economics at the LMU, worked for banks and an auditing firm, and I began in 2006 for the work for the Archdiocese. An international audience like this is not part of the everyday business of the Bavarian finance officer. So if you have the feeling that there's something wrong or strange in the presentation, it's probably or hopefully not the content, but among other things, the finance department of the Archdiocese is responsible for the asset management, the accounting, the annual and financial statements. We provide support to our parishes, and this is a Bavarian specialty. I think we have already heard of a lot of Bavarian specialties. The financial department contains the church tax office. And so we come to the topic of this morning. Let's have a look at the topics of this presentation. It's a short historical review, the current regulations on church tax in Germany, church tax in figures and surveys, the criticism of the church tax, small excursus, mandate tax or donations, and requirements for acceptance of church financings, a little bit the refreshment of church tax in Germany. Let me start with some historical developments regarding the church tax. Perhaps you have heard about it yesterday. The secularization. With the Reichsdeputationshauptschluss in 1803, find the legislation, it's the principal conclusion of the extraordinary imperial delegation. The church in Germany lost large amounts of assets to the secular rulers. And important sources of income were no longer available to it. Monasteries were no longer centers of spiritual, cultural, and secular life. And as a consequence, many people lost their economic basis. Perhaps you know the Archdiocese tries to renew such places, and we spend a lot of money in Beuerberg, it's a small village south of Munich, to renew a place of church life there. It's not a new monastery, but it's a place of church life for the people there, for the people around. In return, the states commit to pay for the upkeep of bishops, cathedral chapters, and seminaries. That's the so-called state payments, different from the church tax. And available for church funds to finance needs beyond local demand is insufficient. Schools, museums, all these things are not sufficient finance. The financing of church life is strongly localized, parishes, foundations, etc. Different to the mentioned state payments, church tax is no immediate consequence of the secularization in Germany. It's more a consequence of social change who encounters empty state coffers and financially weakened churches. In the course of the 19th century, social change leads to ever greater challenges of the states and the churches due to increasing industrialization and urbanization. After the secularization, essentially donation-based financing of church life is by far not sufficient to cover these needs. To enable the churches to accomplish their mission, not least to relieve the financial burden to the public side, they were gradually granted the right to levy taxes. Initial objection by the church to be granted taxation rights was unsuccessful. We fight this for influence of the state, for co-determination. Legal incorporation of the church tax in the Weimar Constitution in 1919 and in 1949 adoption of the regulation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Germany. Germany, all religious and ideological communities that are corporations under public law are entitled to pay taxes by constitution law. This implies the right to collect taxes is not an exclusive privilege of the both major Christian churches in Germany. A person is subject to church tax in a German diocese if they have their residence there, if they belong to the Roman Catholic Church as a universal church, and if they are subject to income tax by the tax office, the state tax office. Baptism is the relevant factor for church taxation in Germany. Whether faith is practiced, it's not relevant for church tax purposes. The church tax is not a type of income, but rather 9%, 8% in Bavaria, another specialty of the state tax income tax. Church tax is an annexed tax, and the church tax is paid by church members, can be deducted from the state income tax. We have two forms of state collection in Germany for the taxation of income. The wage tax is a special form of income tax for employees. In Germany, the majority of church tax is collected by the tax authorities of the respective federal states. In Bavaria, church wage tax is collected by this way, whereas church income tax is collected by the church tax offices of the church themselves. The state collects church tax from member churches of the Protestant Church, the dioceses of the Roman Catholic Church, the Catholic diocese of the Old Catholics in Germany, a number of free churches, the Unitarian religious community of Free Protestants, and the Jewish communities. The tax authorities of the federal states receive an administrative cost compensation for their administration of church tax, and depending on the federal state, this amounts to 2 to 4% of the church tax revenue. It's a good deal, I think. In 2021, the German states received a total of around 190 million in fees from the Roman Catholic Church, the same amount from the Protestants. It depends from the volume of fee. Most important in the discussion of the church tax is paid exclusively by church members. And it's fairer compared to a common membership fee. A membership fee is essentially the same for every member. You have special rates for children or seniors, but essentially it's the same for every member, regardless of whether someone has a high or a low income. In contrast to this, people with low incomes pay little or no church tax. Let's have a look on the church tax in figures. The total revenue from Roman Catholic church tax for all German dioceses in 2023, 6.74 billion euro. The average revenue per church member was 326 euro. The figures are from the Kompetenzzentrum Kirchenmitgliedschaft und Kirchensteuer in Freiburg. And for comparison, the membership fee of the McFit gym is 359 euro per annum. And McFit, you know, is not a very luxury gym. Interesting is the average revenue, I mentioned it, is 326 euro per annum, but the average revenue per tax-paying church member is 558 euros. So you see, one little more than 1/2 of all church members pay church tax. I mentioned it, it's an annex tax. It's the same with the state income tax. In the last year, for example, the Süddeutsche Zeitung has reported that many people no longer find church tax in keeping with the times. They told around 3/4 of people in Germany no longer consider church tax to be in keeping with the times. This is the result of a representative survey conducted by the Opinion Research Institute, YouGov, on behalf of the German press agency. So please let's have a look at the following chart. All these data are also from the Kompetenzzentrum Kirchensteuer in Freiburg. And you can test it, you among you would agree to that. The statement is, I think the church should finance itself in a different way, not through the church tax. You can see three pictures. The left-hand side, the Protestant answers, in the middle, the Catholics, and on the right side, the people without religious denomination. In the x-axis, you can see the amount church taxes paid. It's the more taxes are paid, the less fundamental criticism there is. And you can see the most criticism on the right side, people without religious denomination. In a survey, all German people, this is mixed. Another statement was, the church is so rich that my payment doesn't even matter. Again, the answers of the three parts. You see, once again, most according to this is people with non-denomination. And the next and last one of these charts, the height of the church tax is appropriate. And it's once again the same picture. You see the most, that's the picture without religious denomination, and the other ones are half and half. I know it's not but the data shows, and once it's clear, nobody likes paying taxes. Now that's I think it's not this topic. But the data shows people with no ties to the church leave it when they earn money for the first time and have to pay tax on it. That is our experience. At the start of their career, it's often a small amount. Others leave our church because they disapprove of its actions or political positions and do not want to support them with their own money. But looking at the survey figures alone, the strongest criticism of church tax obviously comes from people who pay little or no church tax. Certainly, some people leave the church and are now without religious denomination. So it's not simple to take this data. So, but I think the general way is obviously. We see increasing demands for more co-determination, and in particular for more influence on the use of tax paid. On the one hand, there are calls for more funds to be used for supra-diocesan issues. On the other hand, tax paying of parishioners want their taxes to be used locally. But for the most part, there's no fundamental criticism of the church tax system among church members. See, once again, nobody likes paying taxes. But priests and parishioners themselves see the great need for stable and sustainable financial resources directly on site. Church employees must be paid appropriately, and churches and parish halls must be maintained. Pastoral care, caritas, and education need suitable and appropriate spaces. At this point, allow me to make a malicious reference to the employees of the Vatican Museum. Volunteers need full-time employees for support, and also parish priests need full-time employees for support. The administration is becoming more and more complex, and it's not only the church administration, especially this administration by state law, by law of the European Union. In Germany applies the principle of subsidiarity. Germany's own history and the increasing autocratic structures in the countries of our world best show how important non-governmental structures are and its church mission. Caritas and education as basic missions of the church must take place under the legal and social framework conditions that apply in Germany. We have more than 2,000 churches and chapels in the Archdiocese. Most of them are listed are under the monument protection. It costs a lot of money, and we are, according to the Code of Canon and according to state law, we have to maintain these buildings and all these cultural assets. And this is most of our 800 million budget. We have to pay the employees of the diocese after the collecting the collected waves, I think it's the right. We have pensions to pay. And so the obligations of the Archdiocese are as big as the assets. And a pastoral question is, a political question is, would it be really a good idea in times when the Christian life is reaching fewer and fewer people in large parts of Europe to withdraw from thousands of schools, kindergarten, or from social charitable counseling of people? It's often the last chance to come into contact with people who don't attend church services or don't belong to the church. I mentioned it, in Germany, all religious and ideological communities that are corporations under public law are entitled to collect taxes by the constitutional law. The German tax offices are compensated, and in Bavaria, this fee is 2% of the collected tax volume. Let's have a look on the mandate tax. The mandate tax is often mentioned as an alternative to church tax. Once again, in Germany, only church members pay church tax. Financing the churches from a completely new state culture tax paid by all citizens would ultimately mean a state-financed church. The revenue from the culture tax would be significantly lower than that from church tax. And with regard to the regulation of how the tax of taxpayers who do not select a recipient in their tax declaration is used, the Italian procedure would potentially be constitutionally problematic in Germany. Another alternative would be a church financed purely by donations. But without doubt, the donation-based financing of church would never generate similar high and stable income and could be structured as fairly as the current church tax system. And regarding to the wages, a stable income is necessary on the German labor market. The expectations of the German population towards their state, which also strongly influence people's expectations of the churches. And they differ, for example, significantly from those of people in the USA, who place much greater emphasis on individual responsibility. The total donations in Germany, which also include donations for more than 40 million church members and donations to numerous church institutions, amount to between 5.8 and around 12 billion euros, depending on the source and method of calculation. The upper end of the range thus roughly corresponds to the current total church tax revenue of both churches in Germany. So I think it's not an alternative to finance churches by donations. Let's have a look on the requirements for acceptance of church financing. First of all, and I think this was the beginning of the refreshment of the church tax, is the transparency in the use of funds. Over the last 10 years, the church in Germany has made considerable efforts to make the use of resources transparent. Many German dioceses disclose their financial statements and circumstances in accordance with general German accounting standards. This is Handelsgesetzbuch. Not new, but even more valid, no taxation without representation. The co-determination through democratically elected committees that decide on the budgets of the dioceses and recognize the annual financial statements. People who attend church services would take advantage of church offerings like caritas, like education, or who volunteer in the church themselves, can often well understand the need for financial resources and for an active church life. These people know how important solidarity-based and fair financing is. However, this does not apply to the vast majority of church taxpayers. Although members of our church, they hardly have any contact with in their everyday life. However, this loose connection is certainly not a purely German phenomenon. However, if the vast majority of Catholics are only personally contacted by their church as part of their tax payment, this represents first and foremost a pastoral challenge. And this challenge would not disappear if church tax were abolished or replaced by a culture tax. Regularity, good governance, and real transparency in the use of funds are prerequisites for financial solidarity. It's important to make it clear again and again that solidarity-based financing cannot be taken for granted. Transparency also serves to create awareness of which specific areas of church life are financed from the funds provided by members. Money needs to be talked about. The believers in Germany support the universal church and superdiocesan activities to a considerable extent. But regional connection and routing is important for the willingness to show solidarity. Church tax means a financing system that doesn't offer the individual member a direct compensation. It serves to support a community in solidarity. In a democratic society, real co-determination and control of the use of funds is a prerequisite for the acceptance of such a system. Let me conclude a little bit. Transparency inside and outside is the basis for the acceptance of church finance, especially given the current loss of trust in our church in German. Awareness for the needs is another one. Money needs to be talked about, I mentioned it. And real co-determination is the third one. You know, according to the Code of Canon Law, the Finance Council has to draw up a budget according to the instructions of the bishop, and has to approve the budget bill. I think a small step would be helpful. I think it would be helpful to share budgetary rights. For example, to decide on the specific use of certain parts of the budget on site. Archdiocese has two projects in the Archdiocese in the building, the construction. So we try to give more decisions on site. The people on site decide which building they would or need to maintain. In the next years, which buildings are necessary for the customer. Thank you for listening. It's a pleasure, and was a pleasure to be here today. And yes, Professor Robert, the floor is yours. Once again.
So thank you very much, Mr. Reif, for this very inspiring and very clear presentation. I think even the church taxpayers among us were surprised on some figures, some findings you have presented us. Thank you very much. We have plenty of time for discussion here from the room and discussion from our digital participants. And so go ahead. Okay.
Thank you. You said, and rightly, that nobody likes paying taxes.
That's in Africa too.
Yeah. And yeah, in Africa too. And you said that some of those who criticize the system of tax churches are very often those who do not participate, who do not pay those taxes. I do agree with that. But at the same time, surely somehow those who pay, or at least some who pay the taxes, still criticize it. I don't have the statistics, but I read an article 2 years ago, and those statistics say somehow, and it is evident that the number of formal defection from the church is growing in the world, and somehow, particularly in Germany and in the Netherlands, many people formally leave the church. The article I read, the protagonist was a retired canon law teacher. He underwent a long administrative procedure to formally leave the church with 2 appeals. And the underground problem was linked to the taxes to be paid to the church. He did not feel it's still hard to pay those taxes. And that is somebody who was teaching canon law for many years and who came to that resolution at the end of his public career, if I can say so. So you, as a financial director of the Archdiocese of München, since statistics are clear that formal defections are growing higher and not declining because of tax paying for the church, how do you foresee it in the future, and what is being done already to counteract this problem?
So it's quite a difficult problem. You have to decide which activities, which kind of church life you can finance, well, you would like to finance with the assets you get. It's a political decision, and it's you have to decide which buildings, which activities, which schools you will maintain. But once again, to the figures, we have around about 20 million members, church members. Around about 10 million are tax-paying members. Around about 1.23 million use church services, and around about 2-3 million are active themselves in the church. It's volunteers or something. That makes clear it's first of all it's a pastoral challenge, and if this will be successful, if the pastoral will be more successful than the last years, I think we can bring back the church.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's schools, daycare centers are basic for this.
Okay, I personally agree with you that at the end it is a pastoral challenge. I remember yesterday the first presentation, the first speaker told us, and I think it is important for the church to speak of the good the church does with all the money it has. Because many people decide to formally leave the church because of money, because they think that somehow the church has got too much money and they keep on feeding the church and nothing is being done. And I think really at the level of pastoral, something should be done. Let the people know how the money is used and how much good the church does with the money. Then they may be convinced to keep on giving to the church.
Transparency, what you do with the money.
There exist among the 27 dioceses in Germany very poor and very rich dioceses. Some have 200 euro per member and year. Some have 400 euro per member and year tax income. What's about solidarity between the poor and the rich dioceses in Germany?
First of all, you have completely different life circumstances. Which is with 200 euro church tax, that you have lower Miete, I don't know.
What is
Miete, the English for Miete.
the rent?
The race,
Rent.
you have very lower rents than on the other. It's another situation in Görlitz than in Munich.
Mhm.
It's different circumstances of life, and solidarity is there. We show solidarity. We do solidarity. We are solidary. It's a budget, super diocesan budget, 120 million roundabout. And another one from the area with about 40 million. It's all super diocesan.
Speaking about budgets and solidarity, I'm just curious how much is given outside of Germany. So, like, is there a certain percentage, a certain budget that we use to support other countries or projects?
I do not know exactly the amount, but we have around about 40 million euro over the fund that we do for the international caritas and so on. Every diocese has own budgets for international You know, the Miserio Caritas International, we know how this is all the. So, Missio.
Und Missio auch.
Yes, we are both coming from Missio, from fundraising department. I was talking yesterday about the need of fundraising for the Catholic Church. So I agree with you that it would be very difficult for like fundraising to manage to raise like the same amount that is now raised by taxation. It is very clearly, but I have just one idea, like food for thoughts. In your statistics you were showing, you said, like that is the interpretation that I draw, that richer people who are paying higher taxes, they don't mind to pay the taxes, while poor people, like people who have less income, that they are the ones who are not so happy about it. So my idea is that it can also be because, I mean, you said that people who have very little income, that they don't have to pay, but even the question is, what is little income? Even like in a city of Munich, even medium income might be not enough to live. So maybe it is not because they don't want to give, but maybe because they can't, or because it is a problem. So if you force people to give who maybe it makes them to suffer, maybe they have children, family, you might lose them, because it is also like from statistics that people, they also leave church because of the taxation. So just my idea is that people who already pay a lot of money or who pay high taxes, they don't mind. So maybe they also don't mind to give more if you ask them to donate like voluntarily. So even though I agree that it would be very difficult to raise such an amount with like voluntary donations, but I would recommend to add fundraising as another pillar of income, because also fundraising, depending on how you grow it, it can also become like a reliable source of income. So that is just my idea that I had.
I think we can be successful collect funds, fundraising for special activities, like a museum, like a church, like a parish hall, etc. Fundraising for the archdiocese is extremely difficult. The people see the assets. He is 3 billion of assets, but don't see the obligations. And so it's really a problem for the big institution to collect funds by fundraising. It's possible for smaller ones and for special activities, events, activities.
I have a question. Have you the percentage of the revenues of the assets of the diocese? There is a certain percentage of your financial means.
Around about 70%.
70? You mean you have from what the archdiocese owns a revenue of 70% of your
Not of the assets, of the budget.
Oh, the budget. You mean the costs now? No. I mean the revenues, the income. 70%.
Around about 70%. Yes, we have 800 million roundabout, and 600 million more than
comes from rents and so on.
No, church tax. Church tax.
Also, 30% comes from rents and other interests and things like that.
We have round about 70% round about church tax, 10-15% state payments, but not the state payments. It's subventions for or the kindergarten, the schools, etc.
Oh, yeah, I see.
The rents, the revenue from the rents are very small,
Ah, okay.
2%.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's good to know, because many people think, oh, the church has so many buildings and they don't need church tax.
And I think we get around about 100 million for schools and kindergarten from the state.
Okay.
But it was not all schools.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. You have shown us that the church tax in Germany is necessary for our church. But regarding to the lower number of taxpayers and the lower number of income every single year, do you see possible ways or some occasions for reducing the financial expenses in our dioceses?
Most of the expenses are for paying our employees. So if we have to reduce these expenses, we have to reduce the church activities, the church life. That's the most part of our costs. Another one are the buildings, etc. But the biggest part of the budget is for the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
These are the political decisions I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a question to all church members and non-church members. For many non-church members, it's very important to maintain the church building in their village. They don't use it, they don't church services, but the buildings, the church building is very, very important. That's a possibility for fundraising. But normally not church members, but non-church members.
Also a question about the future. In the USA, we saw also a collapse of dioceses because of the immense expenses for abuses and the judgment about this. Is there also the danger in Germany? I don't think Munich, but some dioceses like Berlin or so on, that there will be a collapse of finances, or would you say it's impossible? Or
No, not impossible. But I'm not the right person to answer. I do not know the real circumstances of the diocese. I'm not sure if the transparency is really complete.
I may join a question myself. Often a discussion about church tax, German church tax system is very fundamental. That's in church, all is fundamental, all is question of heaven and hell. But that's not a good approach to such a complex matter as church tax. We know also in society and politics, we have to manage change processes. And to manage change processes means to have a conscience, a collective conscience of the need. For instance, climate change, we have to make the change process to renewable energies. That's evident. But that's only the point where the problem starts. How to do? Should we forbid all the automobiles and all be bicycle riders and so on? How to manage that? And I miss a little in our discussion good points, and we need 200 points, but let's start with some 10, 20 good points, how to manage the change. You have mentioned, for instance, accountability, responsibility, participation in decision process. It's interesting that yesterday, Matt Mannon of the USA, it's a very different system, but he stressed very much on accountability and responsibility, participation. And he had also some good figures of their survey that in parishes where accountability is given, the readiness to donate more is much higher. So we have some empirical evidence for that. But of course, first in Germany, a main problem of this change process is the identification with the church. And of course, that's also church politics, church life, spirituality, and so on. But for instance, one point I personally reflect very much on is the question, would it be possible that we give at least some possibility to donate your church tax, not to the church as such, to your diocese, but for instance, to your parish? And of course, at the end, also the diocese can make a taxation of this. Matt Mannon has given the example of many USA dioceses where they take 10% of the revenue of the parish for diocesan questions. Of course, that's complicated, and you know much better than myself. It's very, very complicated to do that, but at least think about it. Think about manageable ways to do it. That would be fine, because we know our church tax system is under pressure, and you have seen also the ecumenical aspect. Among the Protestants, church tax is highly accepted. It was very impressive in your figures. But among the Catholics, maybe even by historical reasons, church tax is always a child we don't like. And so in a crisis, it can collapse.